Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic peeps to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, yeah, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, but plenty of stuff in between. And today's video is one of those in-between videos. I will be telling you guys about all the books I read in September and October. It's a total of about 16 books and 3 short stories. And although it seems like a lot to talk about in one video, I will have a few things to say, but I also documented reading these books in a lot of different vlogs. So we will get into the nitty-gritty, but I will also have videos linked down below for more details on my thoughts on some of these books. Alright, without further ado, let's go to this short intro, and when we come back, we will talk about the flippin' books. The first book I'm going to talk about that I read back in September is They Thirst by my favorite author, Robert McCammon. This book is pretty damn epic, I gotta say. It's a chunker, but a lot of fun stuff happens. This takes place in LA, where a whole bunch of vampires are kind of waiting in the wings to take over, and they start to take over. And there's a few people who recognize what is going on and who try to stop it. And so this is really, really a fun ride. Lots of action, especially near the end. You know, some people might complain that there's a little too much going on. However, I enjoyed it. This is one of McCammon's early books that, you know, he's not the most fond of, but I still think this is a great, awesome book. Totally worth reading. And I gave this 4 stars. So yes, definitely not my favorite McCammon, but still entertaining, still worthwhile. Still, I think, you know, not talked about a lot, and I am so glad I checked it out. Also, some of the vampires have kind of like a psychic element to their abilities, not just drinking blood and all this and that, so I found that to be interesting too. And like all McCammon books that I've checked out, I found that the audiobook was awesome. McCammon seems to have great narrators for his audiobooks, and this was no different. Just amazing narration for the audiobook, so I do suggest that. Next up, a reread for me, and it's actually my only reread of this year. I reread My Best Friend's Exorcism in anticipation of the movie coming out, which, spoiler alert, I did not like. So yeah, I just did not like the movie adaptation at all. My friend Kat and I actually talked about how we felt about the adaptation and some other movies we watched in October. We had a whole big chat about everything we watched. So if you want to check that out, I will link it below. But yes, the first time I read this, 2 or so years ago, I read it physically, just with my eyes alone, loved it, thought it was about 5 stars, rereading it, definitely a 5-star, absolutely sure of it. I used the audio as well, and the audio was fantastic. I even told Kat, like, why couldn't the movie have been like the audio in terms of acting quality? Because the voice acting was incredible for the audiobook, whereas the actual acting in the movie, I wasn't the hugest fan of, personally. If you guys liked it, more power to you. Totally okay to agree to disagree, as long as we're respectful. I just did not like the acting and a lot of other elements in the story and changes that they made from the book to the movie. But the book still holds up 2 or so years later after I first read it. Such a great book. A book about friendship, not just about horror. In fact, the horror is really such a minimal part of this book, in my opinion. It could also be about the horrors of growing up, not just, you know, possession type of horror. I think it's a fantastic book with a really powerful ending, and that's something that the movie kind of skips over as well, is the impact that the ending had in the book. It just wasn't there for the film. So anyway, love the book, so glad I revisited it. I did do a recent reads video where I talked about both of these books, so I will just briefly kind of talk about them again. I read Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon, or Tryon, I never know how to say it, and also Tommy and the Order of Cosmic Champions by Anthony J. Rapino and Anthony D. Great, and I really enjoyed both of these. So I will talk about Harvest Home first. This one blew me away with atmosphere, a slow build of dread. It won't be for everybody because it is a slow burn, but this is a fantastic autumn read, and it was just very, very impactful. Some of the imagery near the end I really liked. And of course, this is a folk horror type of book. And look at my fantastic old school copy. Very, very awesome. I love this copy. It is kind of falling apart. I did read it on Kindle, so I wouldn't make this fall apart even more. I gave this 5 stars because, again, I really was surprised by how much I loved it, even though it was a slow burn. So if you're not a fan of those, you know, it might not be for you. But if you don't mind those, then I think this definitely just packs a punch, and you get to know the characters in this small town that this takes place in, and you feel like you know them, which kind of adds to the horror when things start to ramp up. So I've got more to say in my recent reads video, which I will link below if you want to hear more of my immediate thoughts after I had just finished this. I also enjoyed, as I said, Tommy and the Order of Cosmic Champions. I think this is a marvelous, kind of new because it just came out in October. This is a great newer middle grade read, and especially if you know any kids or you yourself like middle grade reads that have to do with a more kind of fantasy slash sci-fi-ish type of element. More fantasy, not really sci-fi. There is cartoon characters and slash comic book characters in this, and that's kind of like the fantasy element, and they start talking to our main character Tommy. But at the heart, at the core, this is a coming of age story. We're following Tommy going through a lot of tough times growing up, dealing with his parents who may or may not get a divorce, as well as bullies at school. So all that is very relatable, I think, for kids today, and also kids of any day and age, because, you know, bullying is a big thing, divorce is a big thing for a lot of people of many different generations. So yeah, I think this is very, very relatable, and if you like middle grade reads that are not really pure horror, this, like I said, it's really more fantasy and definitely has some like comic book feel to it. It's got some action to it, very long action scenes in here, and some of the main action actually takes place over Halloween weekend, so it does have fall vibes too. So if any of that sounds appealing to you, why don't you check it out? Because I do like Anthony J. Rapino very much. I think he's a great author. I read another book of his that I will talk about. And quickly, I don't want to forget, I did read 3 short stories in September from Night Shift, the Stephen King short story collection. And the 3 I read were Graveyard Shift, also The Mangler, as well as The Lawnmower Man. And not only did I read these 3 stories, I also watched the movie adaptation of all 3. So yes, all 3 movies that were loosely based on the stories. Kat and I actually talked about the stories and the movies, and we had a blast. So I will link our live chat below, but it does contain spoilers because it was kind of like a true story review, movie review type of stream where we talk about all the details, like I said, which includes spoilers. So if you're interested and you have read the stories, check out our stream. Another book that I talked about in a live stream, The Amulet by Michael McDowell. This was my book club pick for the month of September. My book club is called the Midnight Book Society, and we are taking a hiatus in November and December, but we will be back in full swing in January of 2023. And by the way, our book club pick for February of 2023 will be Swan Song. So that book is rather long. This is by Robert McCammon, of course, my favorite author. People have expressed interest in reading that. I know some people just did a buddy read with Marcy over from Marcy Reads and Daisy, my friend from Instagram. So if you are one of the people who read it along with Marcy and Daisy and their group, then check out our live stream, which will come in March sometime. So sometime after February next year. I know we're looking far ahead, but it is a flippin' long book. So if you want to get a jump start, you can start whenever you want, whether that be January, December, whatevs, even now while we're still in November. Up to you. Check out the length and determine how long you need if you want to join in and are interested. I have never read Swan Song. I'm going to be reading this also as a buddy read with my friend Amy over at Amy Noel Reads. Her channel is fabulous. She's such a joyous person. I love her personality. I really, really, truly, sincerely do. And she and I are going to read it together, and also we're going to chat about it together. She said she'd chat about it with me since I decided to make it my book club pick. I will have something short for the month of January, like maybe a middle grade read or a short novella, like an adult novella perhaps. We will see, but I will announce that soon. But again, if you want to jumpstart on Swan Song, check it out. But for September, we did read The Amulet, and I was joined by Katrina Brown. Check out her channel. The channel name is Katrina Brown. She and I had a live stream chat with spoilers, and we talked about how unique the kills in this book truly, truly were. So Michael McDowell, this is my second book by him. The first book I read by him was The Elementals, and I gave that 5 stars. This one, I think, had more horror, actually, and definitely crazy kills in this one. However, I would say I gave this one a 4 star. A lot of people I know, though, gave this a 5 star when they read it with me for the book club. So lots of people enjoyed this. Very, very just off-the-wall type of kills, brutal stuff. Interesting story. Essentially, the premise, there's a cursed necklace, or aka amulet, and it's getting passed around throughout this little small town, and people who wind up with this amulet end up causing harm to others and coming to harm themselves. So it's a whole big thing. What's behind this amulet? What is going on? Why is this happening? And how are things going to end? You know, will the violence stop? Will someone figure out a way to, you know, end the cycle of crazy, cursed happenings that is coming to be because of the amulet, or will it just destroy the town? That's essentially the question that is kind of raised throughout the whole book. So I do recommend this because it was a fun time. A little bit of a slow start, but then it picks up, like I said, and there is a lot of crazy violence throughout the book here and there too, especially for a more old school book. This was originally published, I believe, in the 70s, right? Let me look. 1979. So, yes. And the very last thing I read for the month of September was When Halloween Was Green. And I read this sometime after the first day of fall, which was September 22nd. And, you know, this was basically something I wanted to read to get into the fall vibes and the fall mood and to get hyped for Halloween. The spin about this that makes it different than other Halloween reads is that this has an Irish flair, which I love Irish culture. I love Irish lore, and I definitely want to get into more Irish lore next year. I'm going to even do a whole Irish themed horror reading vlog. I'm very pumped about that vlog that I'm going to do, and I think it's going to take place during the month of St. Patrick's Day, of course, because that would be just fun to do it like as a big thing and a thematic vlog for that holiday, especially because I really love that holiday. So this was kind of like a sneak preview into what I could be getting into with that vlog. But it was definitely appropriate for fall time since it's all about Halloween, descriptions of weather in here. And essentially we're following this family, basically an uncle and his nephew, and they run or help run a haunted attraction, like a haunted house that people go and get tickets and walk through and get scared, that type of haunted house. And they're friends with a whole bunch of other people who own haunted houses and haunted attractions across the whole area. And so there's like a, you know, tight-knit group of these people who all love haunts and run haunts. And they all start dying one by one. So what's going on? And come to find out, and this is not a spoiler because it's in the back of the book, something is going on to where the Irish monsters and creatures of old lore are coming back, and they're able to wreak havoc because people forgot about Halloween. You know, it's supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be a time that you fear, not a time to be cute, not a time to be, you know, sexy or whatever. I will say, so this could have been so perfect with the atmosphere, but the action scenes were a little too long. Also, some of the scenes got really repetitive to where things happened over and over again. And finally, some of the messaging was kind of repetitive. You know, the author really driving it home that these characters are like, we totally forgot Halloween was supposed to be scary, and they say that over and over again. You know, everyone thinks it's supposed to be sexy. You know, that's not what Halloween's supposed to be. And so this is why they're able to get a jump on us now. We have to be scary and scare the monsters back. And they keep saying this over and over again. Is it still worth the read? Yes. I gave this a 3.5. Again, it would have been like a 4.5 with the setting, the atmosphere alone, but because of the repetitiveness and the length, you could easily chop down 100 to 150 pages in this book. This book is over 400 pages, and I really didn't think it needed to be this long. However, if you're interested, I'd say check it out, see for yourself, because it just did deliver with awesome feels, and it set the mood for me to get ready for Halloween time and for October, which was just around the horizon when I was reading this. I read this during a vlog, and I actually technically finished it at the very beginning of October, but I'm still counting it as a September read because I started in September, so whatever. I'm counting it. I want to do that. That's what I want to do. so I'm gonna do it. Alright, so if you want to see more about this, I've got an epic travel vlog because I was reading this while I was traveling, you know, all throughout the Northwest, and it was so much fun seeing, you know, the fall foliage, I can never say that right, and reading this. It was just perfectly appropriate for the time of year and a perfect way to get excited for everything that was to come. Okay, that was everything I read in September, and here is everything I read in October. 10 books for October. I did participate in Halloweekend, the awesome month-long readathon that took place during the weekend, every single weekend of October, and it was fantastic. I was able to complete all the main reading prompts, which there were 5, and also able to complete the 5 bonus prompts, so that was a total of 10, and that is why I ended up with 10 books. So all the prompts were done, and I'm very proud. Plus I had a lot of other fun joining in on sprints, and it was just a wonderful, awesome time. I also accomplished some photo prompts. I vlogged every single weekend of that readathon, so I will link all the vlogs below because I go into depth on like every single book that I read. First up, a vintage paperback, a paperback from hell type of book, The Devil's End by D.A. Fowler. I read this with Kelly's book club. Of course, that is Kelly from Kelly Hooked on Books. Check her out. Her channel is fantastic, and her book club is called the From Hell Book Club. Also, for that month, our friend Crystal over at the channel Fiber Artsy, check her out. She is the one who picked out this book for that month because we have read Deborah Fowler, or aka D.A. Fowler's books before, and have liked them and thought they were kind of insane and fun. This one, not as much. The ending saved it, because I would have rated this much lower if it had not been for the ending. Essentially, there are strange things afoot, like witchcraft going on. There's an evil. I can't even really remember the entire premise. I felt like the majority of the story was very generic, nothing special, definitely an occult-themed book, but the ending really ramped things up and made it special. The ending was brutal. I would not suggest it to just casual horror readers because it was kind of wild and very disturbing. Anyway, 3.5 only because the end. If it had not been for the ending, maybe a 3, maybe even lower, I don't know. But not my favorite, in fact, my least favorite by D.A. Fowler, and I've read 3 books, including this one, by her so far. So yes, this is at the bottom of the 3, but still worth it if you like a shocking ending or an ending that's kind of nuts and a little gross. So yes, check it out if that intrigues you, but be warned, the rest of the book is really not the best, to be honest with you. And there is some dated and problematic things throughout the book, which you find in a lot of old school horror paperbacks. So if you're sensitive to that, definitely, you know, don't pick this up. But if you're somebody who just expects that with older horror and it, you know, you can grin and bear it, then maybe check it out if you're intrigued by the end. Next up, Dark Harvest by Norman Partridge, and this was a really, really atmospheric book in some ways. For instance, there is this creature called the October Boy, and essentially it's like kind of a living pumpkin creature. His body is made of vines and also candy, and that's the part I really liked, was the descriptions of the candy. And you know, he's got like this cool flaming pumpkin skull and everything, and he's got to try to not get killed this one evening on Halloween, and all the boys, for some reason, and that's the mystery at the core of this, they're trying to hunt down the October Boy. Why? What is the significance? Again, you have to read to see. The writing was a little odd. It's like the narrator was talking to you, but wasn't a part of the action at the same time. So that was a little distracting at times, and I didn't know why it was necessary to write it that way. Also, I just thought there could have been more to the story, some more details. However, still worth reading, pretty short and quick and easy. I gave this a 3.5. It was pretty decent for me, but not my favorite read of the month, and not my favorite in terms of like a shorter horror book that I checked out. And not my favorite October read of any October, like in terms of a Halloween thematic book. Definitely not my favorite one of those types of books. Next up, I have Night in the Lonesome October by Richard Lehman. It's about this guy who gets recently broken up with by his girlfriend, and he's so distraught and sad, and he keeps thinking about her. And so he goes on this walk to try to like forget things and just get out of, you know, his college apartment. And he just is wandering one night and starts seeing like different things, observing weird people out late at night. And it's almost like a different universe with all these weirdo people out late at night. He sees a girl who probably shouldn't be out by herself, and she's walking around at like 2 a.m. and he's like, what the hell? And he kind of gets transfixed with this girl and almost like obsessed with her. And also he runs across her best friend, who he starts to kind of like a little bit too. So there's like some love angles in this, and I don't know, the main character is very weird. He kind of gets obsessed with like looking into windows and like seeing what people are up to, almost like a peeping Tom in a way. So like, why did I like this book? I don't know, but I did like it. And this is Richard Lehman again, so you're talking about trashy, inappropriate things sometimes, over-the-top language, just non-PC type of stuff too. But I always say that, you know, if you can disregard some of his problematic issues, some of his stories are just really quick and fast-paced, easy to read, and for some reason they're compelling. Like, I kept wondering, why is this guy walking around? Like, what is he so intrigued by, and what is going to happen? What is going to be the main point of the story? So I kept reading, and the tension was building at times, and I was kind of transfixed on what was going to go down. So I will say, I gave this a 4.5. I knocked off a half star because of some of the weird kind of stereotypical things that he wrote about certain characters that I didn't really like, and I thought, like, you know, it can't be a 5-star because of that. But the story was compelling, it was intriguing, I was transfixed, as I said, and I don't even know why. I don't even know why, but I talked about this in one of my vlogs, so I will link, again, the vlogs down below. Yeah, I liked it, and it's really unexplainable. Next up, Kill Creek by Scott Thomas, and I had a blast with this one. I know not everyone likes this one as much as I did. However, I thought it was a great haunted house story. It did not all take place over the course of Halloween night, which I thought it did. So the synopsis kind of makes it seem like everything happens on Halloween night. It's not the case. I don't know why I thought that, but I kind of think it's indicated in the description. And so if you think that, you might be disappointed where you read it, and it's kind of more drawn out. I do think it's a slow burn type of book, and in my opinion, though, it's still entertaining, because just like Harvest Home, the tension builds and builds and builds, and then there's like a huge action scene at the end, which I did enjoy. Now, it's not anything overly original in terms of the haunted house angle, I guess, but what is original are the main characters we're following, which are a group of horror writers, which I love. I love that we're following this group of writers, and I kind of like how we examine their process of writing and how they have distinct and unique different personalities, and how we really get to know these characters throughout the book, and, you know, each of them gets tested psychologically in different ways. And we see that unfold, especially towards the end, like I said, which is very action-packed at the very end. Now, I know some people wish this could be shorter. I do think it could have been a tiny bit shorter, but this had all of the great haunted house story vibes that I was looking for, and I love the added bonus of the unique characters being, you know, specifically horror writers. Come on, I like reading horror books, so to me that was just the cherry on top of everything. So I just had a blast, and overall I gave this a 4.5-star rating. Next up, I read a classic Halloween book, A Night in the Lonesome October, which is a different book than the Richard Lehman book. This one has the letter A in front of it, and the Richard Lehman book does not have the letter A. So his is Night in the Lonesome October, this one is A Night in the Lonesome October. Big difference, no. Anyway, this is by Roger whatever the hell, I cannot say his name. In the many vlogs I tried to say the name, I failed each time. I ended up starting this in the beginning of October, and because the book is by day, and it takes place across every day of October all the way to Halloween, I was trying to do it day by day, like read October 1st on October 1st, read the chapter for October 2nd on the 2nd. However, I did get distracted during the month and did not keep up with it. So we were getting towards the end of the month, and I still had to finish this. And so I ended up getting it on audio to help me push through and to help me finish it at the last minute. And I think that actually affected my enjoyment, because if I wasn't rushing and I had time to enjoy this throughout the month, I think I would have enjoyed it much more. However, because I was trying to go, I did not enjoy it as much. We're following our basically narrator is a dog named Snuff, and he is taking us through, you know, this little town, and all of these famous people are gathered in this town, like, you know, Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster is there, Dracula is there, Sherlock Holmes is in this little town, and they're all gathered there because something is going to happen, and these two sides are going to face off. But why? That is what we are trying to figure out. However, I do think it's kind of slow, but it is thematic. I just wish the ending was a little bit different, and again, maybe if I had taken my time with this, I would have liked it more, but I gave this a 3.5. Still very cute. I love Snuff, the main dog, and following him and his thoughts were really, really a good time. Very unique perspective. I love things told from a dog's perspective. And this is a very smart dog, so it wasn't like, me a good boy or something, like maybe you would think a dog would think like, but no. This was like, you know, he's very smart. He's almost kind of got like, not magical abilities, but he's able to understand his master and help him with tasks, you know, for their supernatural evening that they're preparing for. So, and he also talks with other creatures and I guess other animal familiars of the other famous people, because each of the famous people have a little like sidekick that's an animal, and they're all different animals. So, and the animals converse with each other and stuff. So we do get conversations between the animals, like Snuff is friends with the cat, and then he talks with the bat and a rat, and it all rhymes, but there's other characters too, like an owl. So yes, very entertaining. Definitely a good read for October. So if you're interested, definitely check it out. A lot of people enjoy this more than I did, but again, I think it was just the way I read it at the time. And here we have my least favorite read of October. And this is Death by Halloween by David Workingtons. And this is such a cool concept, and that is why I was kind of disappointed with it. But if I read this on Kindle, I might have liked it more. But reading it physically, I had to keep flipping and flopping and putting in tons of bookmarks to keep my place. Essentially, the reason I had to keep doing that is because this is a choose-your-own-adventure book. So you read one part, then you have to go to a different part. But once that different part ends, you have to go all the way back to where you made the initial decision, and it's just a lot of backtracking. It's not just one set of backtrack, it's like many, many, many. And the reason I didn't like this more isn't really about losing my place. It's about, there's a nihilistic tone in this. This takes place on Halloween, and a guy trying to, you know, decide if he's just going to stay home or go off and take a walk and have an adventure. And how he's kind of sick of doing the same old humdrum, you know, typical stuff for Halloween, and, you know, he's become cynical about Halloween. It used to be his favorite holiday, now it's just another day, and I don't know, that tone got a little tiresome, where it could have been an upbeat, positive tone. But I will say some of the scenarios that played out were very, very creative, very unique, very intriguing, because it was just nuts. Like, there's one thing that happens with a corn maze, which was very intriguing, and different things could have happened with the corn maze depending on different steps you took. Also, something crazy happened under a bridge, something crazy happened with a creature at this zoo place. So yeah, there was a lot of neat things that transpired, which made it an entertaining time. However, just I was a little frustrated with the tone, and I don't know, I just think it could have been done a little bit different, tweaked a little bit, but still, I do think people should check it out, especially if they're used to choose-your-own-adventure books. I read one or two as a kid, but I know some people loved them as a kid, so this is an adult one, so it would be perfect for people who used to like them back in the day. And this is like just, you know, a very more intense one, a more in-depth one, a more violent type of choose-your-own-adventure. So that's what made it cool. I just wish it was a little more positive and upbeat and more fun, if that makes sense. But at least the scenarios were interesting and fun in a way, in a macabre way, I suppose. Yes, I gave this a 3-star rating. Not bad by any means, just not my favorite. And I personally would have changed some things. But again, I do recommend it for those who do like this style of book and who wouldn't be bothered by the tone of the book. Next up, another book by Anthony J. Rapino. I told you guys I would be talking about another one of his books, and here we are. Greetings from Moon Hill. This is a collection of short stories, but what I love and treasure about this is that all the short stories take place in this town called Moon Hill. And Moon Hill reminds me a lot of Autumn Crow. And Autumn Crow, of course, is the short story collection written by Cameron Chaney. And all of the stories take place in Autumn Crow, a town which is basically Halloweenish all the time. Same thing with Moon Hill. Moon Hill, it's got fall foliage. Why do I say it wrong every time? I had it right a couple of weeks ago, but now I've lost how to pronounce it again, apparently. Anyway, there's fall foliage all year long in this town, but things happen in this town that are unexplainable. Bad things happen that are unexplainable. You know, it's not an easy place to live, and strangers who come and visit end up seeing that, but then they quickly forget what they're seeing. So there's this whole big mystery, and there was a couple of stories that I absolutely loved in this, and things get wrapped up at the end to where you learn a little bit more about the town. I just loved how there was a thread that connected everything running through this entire collection. It wasn't random short stories. They all had a reason. They all had a purpose. They all gave more information about this town, more just detail, and it made you feel like you really knew about the town and the people who live there. And yes, I don't often give short story collections this high of a rating, but I'm giving this a 4.5, running it up to 5 for Goodreads because I just had a fantastic time. Such an entertaining, perfect read for October. If you're going to check this out, you can't go wrong in fall time, but it would be great for any time of year, especially if you get towards April and you're missing Halloween. Of course, that is around halfway to Halloween. This would work for then too, and I think it would cure you and give you a little dose of that autumn injection that you might need, you know, that autumn burst that you're looking for. So I'd highly recommend this. I loved it. Again, 2 reads by Anthony J. Rapino in 2 months, and I enjoyed both of them very, very much. This one I liked more, though, because this one had more of a horror tint to it than Tommy and the Order of the Cosmic Champions. And this one, too, it's not the Tommy and the Order of Cosmic Champions. That is the official name. This one is more adult, and the other one is middle grade. This one's a collection of short stories. The other one is one story. So that's the 2 big differences between the 2 books. But yeah, I like this one because it also has more of a horror-centric plot line and feel, and it's definitely in the horror genre. Next up, I read a cute little picture book called The Halloween Mouse by Richard Lehman. Short, sweet, nothing much to say about it. We're following this little mouse who lives in a library, and he's trying to decide if he should leave the library and have an adventure, but he's a little scared. So certain things happen, and he winds up, you know, being sheltered in a little jack-o'-lantern, and it's very, very cute. So I loved it. Very sweet, but again, you could read it in like 10 minutes. That's how short it was. But the pictures were incredible. It's very expensive, so don't expect to find it for a cheap price online. It was outrageous, but I kind of splurged on it, and I treated myself, as I like to do sometimes. And I found a decent deal, but it was still more than I would like to pay. But I'm still glad to own it, and I will definitely read it in future Octobers for sure. And last but not least, Usher's Passing by Robert McCammon, who I've already said twice in this video that he is my favorite author. Essentially, this is based in the Fall of the House of Usher universe. Of course, that is the short story written by Edgar Allan Poe. We're kind of in that same universe where Edgar Allan Poe is actually in the universe, and one of the Ushers who, in this story, they're a real family, they confront Edgar Allan Poe, and they're like, what the hell, why'd you write about our family? Bleh. It is awesome. It's so unique that they do that spin, and that's at the very beginning, so it's really not a spoiler. Also, there's just some fantastic things that develop. However, I do think there is so much going on and so many characters that, you know, some people could get confused. Like, I know my friend Amy, who read this with me for my book club. This was my book club pick for the month of October. Once again, we're called the Midnight Book Society, and we just had a live stream discussion about this past week, so I will link that below, but it does have spoilers. But as you can see, I liked a lot of passages here, and Amy was a little confused by the immense amount of characters and the immense amount of action going on near the end, and there was a dual storyline, and she liked one that was a lesser featured storyline than the other that was the more prominent storyline. So I understand all of that, but essentially we are following the Ushers kind of like in the 80s, basically is the decade this is set in, and the Edgar Allan Poe stuff happens like, you know, way in the Usher past. Then we follow the ancestors along the line, and we get to the current ancestors who the main character is Rick Usher, and he's a horror writer, and he has to go back to the Usher estate, which is called Usherland, because his father is dying of Usher's malady, which definitely is an allusion and a reference to the Edgar Allan Poe original short story, which, yeah, I mean, in that story, the Ushers, they get bothered by the slightest noise or the slightest, you know, bit of light. Same thing, that is what Usher's malady is in this book. You know, the lights bother them. Any kind of noise, they can hear whispers from downstairs, like it's, you know, yelling and screaming. So, very unique take on the whole Usher universe, kind of. McCammon really just crafted a history for the Ushers and really came up with a compelling and interesting story, in my opinion. And I didn't think it was as confusing as Amy did. Amy gave it like a 3.5. I think she's gonna round it up to 4. I gave it a 5-star rating, even though probably with some of the criticisms that I agree with it being a little much of stuff going on near the end, a little too much stuff going on at the end, I should say, and also the end was a little rushed as well. It's probably more like a 4.5, but I just had a great time reading it, so I'm gonna give it a 5. But yeah, I guess technically, if I really was looking at it more objectively and not, you know, as biased as I am about McCammon and his work, I probably would give it 4.5 versus 5. But because I am biased, it's a 5. It is what it is. And look at this fantastic cover, too. And the paperback version has a great cover as well. Anyway, that is it. That is all the books I read in the month of October and September. And I just wanted to do a quick video, but it's actually already long somehow, even though I've already talked about these books already at length in other videos. However, it is what it is. So for this time, that is it for me, guys. And let me know before I go, what book did you like the most in October? What book did you like the most in September? Because I'd love to know your opinions, and maybe that will lead me to picking up something that I haven't heard of or haven't gotten to yet, etc., etc. Comment whatever you want down below. Have you read any of the books I read? If so, which, and did you like them or did you not? And why? Again, no spoilers in the comments though, please. Alright, now, for real, that is it for me. Till next time, you guys know what you can do. Keep on killing it. Bye, guys.